Bienvenidos a Princeton. I am Stephen Kotkin, and I'm the director of the Princeton Institute for International and Regional Studies. The Brazil Lab is one of our signature programs, and I'm honored and thrilled that everyone is here today, and I thank you. We conceived of this as it's obviously an ongoing dialogue, it doesn't start today, with as wide a group of stakeholders as we could bring together. And I see in this room that we have achieved this so far. In addition, for us, it's very important that the dialogue be accompanied by an action plan. Once you leave Princeton, what are the next steps for us to undertake in this enterprise? I'm very, very grateful to our partners, the Princeton Environmental Institute, and Professor Mike Celia will be up here in a second, and also to Professor Joao Biel for his leadership in putting together not just this event, but the Brazil Lab. For Princeton, we have been involved in Brazilian matters for a long time, but as you can see, we have finally gotten serious. Anyway, welcome, please, and now let's hear from Mike Celia.
Thanks, Steve. Well, as Steve said, I'm director of something called the Princeton Environmental Institute, PEI, and on behalf of all of my colleagues in PEI, and in fact everyone across the campus, it's a pleasure to welcome all of you here and to wish you a very productive and enjoyable conference. I wanted to say just a couple of words about PEI, just so you know a little bit about us. Next week, we'll have a big event on campus celebrating our 25th anniversary. So the Institute has been here on campus for 25 years. It's been built on a very strong foundation in the natural sciences. We have tremendous strength on the campus in areas like climate science, biodiversity, water resources, the field of ecohydrology, and a number of other basic sciences. But one of the things we try to do in the Institute is to make sure that we don't only focus on the natural sciences. So for example, we have a significant initiative right now in the environmental humanities, because it's our belief that if we don't include humanities in the discussions of the large problems we face, we can't really get to solutions that are actually going to be effective. And I think that philosophy certainly is evident in the room today. Our motto, in fact, in PEI these days is environmental engagement across disciplines, and we try to practice that as we go forward. I think this conference is a great example of that. If you look at our partners, just the individuals involved, my background is in engineering, and I sit in the Environmental Institute. Steve is in the history department with an affiliation in the Wilson School for International Affairs, and Joao, of course, runs Brazil Lab and sits in anthropology. So we try to practice what we preach, but I think we also recognize that even just the three fields that we're talking about are not nearly enough to really address the issues that we're facing, and that's why we have this remarkable collection in the room today, and why I have so much hope that this collection can actually do great things together. The last thing I wanted to say, Joao asked me to say a quick word about the program, so I'll just say this, which is that as an engineer, I like numbers. I find that numbers oftentimes tell me interesting stories. And in today's program, I think you're going to see at least a couple of sets of numbers. And in case you're interested, I'll invite you to ask yourself what story those numbers are telling you. You're going to hear numbers around two big questions. First of all, what's actually happening on the ground today? How do we know it? And what numbers come from that? And the second is an equally interesting question: what would the world look like without the Amazon forest? And both of those have many dimensions to their answer, but one of them clearly has to do with numbers, and from those numbers generate stories. So I will invite you, if you're interested, to not only think about what story those numbers are telling you, which may be different from your neighbor, but how you think that that story can be woven into the broader conversation that I hope we're going to have here to address the big issues that we actually face. So that's what I had to say about the program, Joao. And again, I want to welcome everyone. I'm really excited about how this has come about. And if there's anything that I or any of my colleagues can do to make your visit to Princeton, if you're from outside, to make it better, please let us know. We'll be more than happy to do it. Thank you.
Okay, so boa tarde. Good afternoon, and I want to thank Stephen and Mike for your wonderful support of the Brazil Lab and all things Amazonia. I also want to extend my warmest welcome to you all, so bem-vindos. We look forward to engaging deeply these next 2 days and to envisioning together concrete steps to reverting the exploitative incursions that have time and again led to what the military engineer and writer Euclides da Cunha saw in his early 20th century Amazonian expedition as the continuous, quote, construction of ruins in the region. Safeguarding the Amazon, its rich biosocial diversity and environmental services for Brazil and the planet is a key mandate for our times. It necessitates our very best ideas and practices. This critical event is part of an ongoing collaboration between Princeton scholars and multiple Brazilian stakeholders committed to the vision of a thriving Amazonia. I emphasize ongoing, as Stephen mentioned in his opening remarks, for we want our joint efforts here to continue way beyond this gathering. A special muito obrigado, thank you, to the awesome Beto Verissimo and Tasso Azevedo, whose deep love for the forest and all its beings, and whose visionary work and stewardship means the world to all of us here, and they are the true connecting tissue of this timely event. Thank you. Having you all here, such a distinguished group of scientists, environmental and indigenous leaders, policymakers, philanthropists, business innovators, and social entrepreneurs, social scientists and humanities scholars, artists and activists, and Princeton community members is what the Brazilian Lab is all about. Spearheaded by peers and in synergy with various departments and programs like the Princeton Environmental Institute, the lab is a plural, multidisciplinary research and teaching hub that takes Brazil as a dynamic nexus for engaging pressing issues such as Amazonian transformations that affect people in Brazil and globally, and whose complexity require collaborative and innovative ways of thinking and doing in our uncertain times. The Brazil Lab's work is in line with Princeton University's strong commitments to internationalization, the environment and service, and to producing a richly diverse public space and a science that is both realist and socially responsible. We firmly believe that Brazil has much to teach us. The concept of Amazonian leapfrogging that I show in this diagram here from the visionary Brazilian scientist and policymaker José Goldenberg. The concept draws from Goldenberg's work, who at various stages of his exemplary career and life of service explored the country's capacities for technological leapfrogging. That is, large-scale innovation drawing from either available or local innovations that propel development and circumvent inefficient and environmentally damaging paths, what he calls the funneling through, right? Especially in times of political and economic adversity, such as today. We have much to learn about the concrete ways ideas emerged from unlikely convergences of science, policy, market, and civil society, evident in Brazil's recent history of large-scale innovation, be it in the fields of energy and ethanol in the 1970s and 80s, indigenous rights in the Democratic Constitution of 1988, unorthodox control of hyperinflation and currency stabilization in the mid-1990s, to the daring universalizing of HIV/AIDS treatment that became the model for global health in the 2000s, and the sophisticated system of land use monitoring and powerful law enforcement that significantly cut deforestation in the 2000s. So it's not just a story of continuous construction of ruins. It took certainly more than a village in Princeton and Brazil to put this conference together. And I also want to specifically thank Carol Dopp, that many of you met through your exchanges, right? The Brazilian lab manager, and Miquel Smugi, who's here sitting in the second row, the lab's postdoctoral research associate, for all their extraordinary help and care. Let's thank them. Support of the Princeton Institute for International and Regional Studies, the Princeton Environmental Institute, the University Center for Human Values, the Program in Latin American Studies, and Princeton's Communications Office is also deeply appreciated and very much acknowledged. And I also want to acknowledge Araquém Alcântara, the photographer of the Brazilian Amazon, who gracefully allowed us to use some of his powerful images for the conference publicity. And during the coffee breaks, you will be able to see a series of his images in the various screens in the room and in the adjacent rooms for the coffee break. So I also want to mention, before we get started, that the conference this afternoon is being live streamed, right? And it's the first event that Princeton's communication office is live streaming via Twitter. So we are on the university's radar as well, and they really greatly welcome the opportunity to divulge the event and the Amazonian cause, right? So we will ask you all that when you post about the conference on social media, please include the hashtag ACT for the Amazon in your posts and tag @Princeton and @Princeton Peers on Instagram and Twitter. So if you have people who would like to watch this right now, live stream, just tweet to them as well, right? So again, thank you, bem-vindos. We are in for a wonderful 2 days of intense discussion and conversation and socialization and among colleagues and friends. So welcome all. Okay, so now I want to call Tasso Azevedo, Beto Verissimo, and Estevão Chiavata to join the first table. Great. So the way we will proceed this afternoon, so Michael mentioned about the numbers. So we will start our first session focusing on Amazonia today. So we'll hear first from Tasso Azevedo, the awesome Tasso Azevedo, who is a Brazilian scientist and social entrepreneur working on the field of forest, sustainability, and climate change. He actually one of the creators of the very powerful engine program, Map Biomas, a platform that produces annual land cover and land use country maps through various multi-institutional collaborations. And I'm not going into details on the bios. The bios are on the website. You can check the specifics of the bios. But this is Tasso Azevedo. So after Tasso, we will hear from Beto Verissimo, who is co-founder and senior researcher at Amazon, a think and do tank based in the Brazilian Amazon, right? And then we will, after we hear about the numbers and the conditions, socio-political, economic conditions in the Amazon, we will hear briefly from Estevão Chiavata, a wonderful filmmaker. He's a director, screenwriter, and producer from Brazil. And he will show a snippet of a film that he just finished called Amazônia, Sociedade Anônima. In Portuguese, in English, we called it in previous times Amazonia Incorporated. I don't know if that's yet the title in English.
Uncovered. Now it's Amazon Uncovered.
Amazon Uncovered, right. And then he will show us a short film that he produced specifically for today, right? So Esteban has done multiple works in various media, and he has just finished an HBO series on the Brazilian scientist Santos Dumont, who in the global south is known to have invented and flown the first airplane, right? But this will be another conference when we bring Esteban back to discuss that with, with this American crowd, okay? So let's give our first panelist a warm welcome.
Cool. Yeah, works better. So I've changed a little bit the story back and forth during the last 2 days. So let's see if it really works. Yeah. So the idea is that I will kind of show up some numbers and some trajectories and etc. of what's going on in the Amazon, and then Beth will catch from there to talk more about like the social and economic aspects of that, and we'll keep doing that. So yeah, Paris 2 degrees, go, it's possible, less than 1.5. Okay, so to get there, according to the IPCC, our budget is 770 gigatons of emission to actually have 50% chance to get, below 1.5. I don't know you, I don't take airplanes that get just 50% chance to get to the destiny. But that's what we are fighting for, right? So it's kind of, it's really tough because we are emitting 50 gigatons today. So it means that, in about like, I don't know, 12, 15 years, we run out of our budget. So because of that, there is a tremendous effort that we have to do to decrease emissions. And in any scenario, to get below 1.5, we have to have negative emissions, which means net negative emissions by half of the century. So big task ahead. And to do so, and there's, I think this was made by Carlos, like this, you gave me this picture. So, so this is basically how the things are today. So you have a lot of emissions from fossil fuels, a lot of emissions from forests. 90% of the CO2 emissions come from fossil fuels. And the forests are also capturing a lot of carbon as well as the oceans. In fact, if you take the land use sector in the forest, the net emissions it's negative already. But there is a lot of emissions coming from there also. So what we have to do to kind of fill up the equation is to decrease the emissions of fossil fuel very heavily, stop the deforestation, and increase the carbon sink on the forest. So that's how we will get to this negative number by half of the century. So that's the challenge. Why is it important? Because Brazil is the 5th largest emitter of greenhouse gas today. And we fight with Indonesia for the 5th place. Sometimes they are 5th, sometimes we are 5th, depending on how much fire you have in Indonesia forest. So, but different from the first 4 countries like China, Russia, India, and US, the bulk of our emissions are not in burning fossil fuels, is actually on land use. So about 70% of our emissions, the gross emissions, come from land use and land use change. It means like agriculture, everything we have in cattle, pasture, and then deforestation, and etc. So it's very important for us to actually understand these dynamics, how this works, how the land change in Brazil, how we use the land. It's absolutely crucial if we want to contribute to this global effort, right? So that's what we have been working in this project called Map Biomas for a while. It's to try to understand what is the trajectories. We go from what to what, how. So this is a kind of collaboration between NGOs, think tanks, startup companies, and in technology and universities to build up this big collection of data of how actually is the story of the land use in Brazil on the last 40 years, 34 years. So in a nutshell, what we do is that we take a Landsat collection of satellite images, and which runs back from the 70s, but like consistently after 85. And we process each pixel of those images. And each pixel is 30 by 30 meters, so the resolution of what we're talking here is 30 meters. So there is 9.5 billion pixels in Brazil. Our work is actually to know what happens with the land in each one of those 9.5 billion pixels in the last 34 years. To do so, we are obviously not doing this looking at the pixels. We are using a lot of machine learning, and everything is processed on cloud in a partnership with Google. That's how we do it. Cool. So then we have this collection of maps. So this is like the map, the last collection that we launched about 2 months ago, which has 20 classes: agriculture, forest, mining, urban areas, water, mangroves, and etc. It's a global accuracy of 85%. And so you can navigate over the time, so in each one of those years, and understand what is the change that we have in terms of area and in terms of the space, right? So it's just one example. If you go here to the Xingu area, where Raoni comes from, remember him? Like Chief Raoni. So yeah, so that's why he's mad, because this is like 85. This is 2017. So you can maybe, is it possible to kind of, because I think it's too bright, right? Maybe. Yeah, so this is like, what you see here is like in pink is agriculture, soybean mainly. In yellow, there would be like pasture. Then we have the green, the light green is like open forest, dense forest, and so on. So it's changing a lot, right? Cool. So because we have a map for each year, we can actually compare those maps and kind of understanding what change has happened in any year between 85 and 2018. And so we can produce those transition maps, and we can start to make questions. For example, I know how much of the area that was forest now is agriculture, and things like that. So, and you can do this for any type of unit, geographical unit. So this is like in Mato Grosso, is one municipality, one of the 5,000 municipalities in Brazil. And so you go to Sinop, this is Sinop in 85, this is 2017. Then I can compare both maps, right? And then I get a snapshot, like everything that is red here is like loss of natural stuff. And there is some green here, Don't be fooled, there is some green. And this is like coming back, right? So, but you can be more specifically. For example, I want to know how much actually was natural forest in 85 that now is in 2018 would be like annual crop, for example. And then you can go back to the map, and then you have now just the areas that have this specific transition to understand. And since we have all the database of the properties, you can also plot all the properties in Brazil, and then you can get an idea of what's happening in each property in Brazil. That's more or less the game. So you can do this with many different ways, looking at roads and all sorts of comparisons. So yeah, the image before and after, because some people don't believe in our map, so we have to have the image and so on. Cool. So this is to understand where the numbers that I will show after will come from. This project now is being expanded to other countries to use the same technology, and actually this is part of our work with Princeton is to help on this effort to bring this to other countries. And so most of the South America, and now going to Indonesia. There is actually a work being done for all the Amazon basin, but because this is the first collection and they are still working on the full collection for the whole period, I will concentrate just in Brazil, which is 60% of the Amazon. So now I will shift to Brazil, which is a cut on this whole reality of the Amazon. Cool. It's big, right? It's a big area. This is a classical image showing that you can put most of the Europe inside of the Amazon. It's a big area. Cool. So this is like what happened between 85 and 2000. I think this will be 2017, but it's ready to 2018. So what you see basically is that from the borders, we have been eating the forest. Basically, that's what's going on here, right? Okay. And so this is a representation of the accumulate loss of the original forest that they have in 88, which was the first year where INPE starts to produce the annual data on deforestation. So basically, we lost almost 20% of the forest cover, the original forest cover. Actually, it's 19. And this varies a lot. That number on the corner. It depends on the different studies that's been done. About another 10 to 20% of the forest is degraded in many forms. That's something that we are getting into in Mapiomas for the next 2 years. Is our big efforts to really know what's the real number, how much the degradation happening. So that will come next. But it's something big. So apart from what we lost, there is a lot of degradation. This is seeing the same information now with a color that shows what's the direction. So as it gets red, it means like that is newer, the deforestation. And it gets yellow, it's older. So you have this idea that it's actually growing from the outside to inside, right? That's the process that's happening in the region. So between what we have cut in the forest and what has been regrowing in this period, we lost one Germany, 40 million hectares. That's what we lost in this last 34 years. And one interesting thing is that this has connections with other elements. And I would just use one, which is water, for the sake of the time. There's a very interesting work done by Carlos Souza in Amazon, in partnership with Amazon and WWF, where they took the data from Mapiomas and then reanalyzed that, specifically looking to the water, to separate what is natural streams and what is the artificial water bodies, and separating this into hydropower dams, the agriculture dams, and then the mining area dams, which you see represented in the map on the different colors. And the interesting thing is the surface of water in the Amazon is decreasing, the general surface of the water. And it's actually decreasing on the natural water streams. And it's increasing on the artificial water streams. And if you see on the map the distribution of where are, for example, the agriculture dams and etc., obviously they are over the area, it's clear cut, right? It's growing there. So there's two signs there. One, after you clear cut the forest, there is less water available at regional. It's an indication of that. And so people start to save water for themselves, and each one makes your own reservoir. And that's, as a consequence, having a consequence on the natural streams downfall. And we don't even have ideas of the consequence in terms of wildlife and et cetera, hydrological cycles and et cetera. Maybe when Paulo talks, he will kind of express that. Cool. So just to have an idea of this impact, just with the agriculture dams, it doubled in the last, from 2000 to 2015, so in just 15 years. And it's 5 times what is officially registered in Brazil. So the official number said that there is about 10,000 water reservoirs for agriculture, and then actually the real number is about 50,000 just in the Amazon. So that's the challenge that we have with this. Cool. So this is deforestation rate. How am I in time? I'm very bad in time, right? No? Okay. So don't never say that I'm good, because I will use that. Okay. So deforestation rate, that's the deforestation rate measured by INPE. That they do this consistently on the last 30 so years, and it's based on it's what we call cross deforestation. So there is a mask that was prepared in 1998 that says this was forest in 1998, and since then They are just counting what we are losing from that original forest. Okay? So it's not counting, for example, deforestation of secondary forests and etc. It's just basically loss of primary forest, which is very worrisome, right? So as we see, like there is this period that we have a lot of the deforestation ups and downs, and then between 2004 and 2012, there is a big decrease on deforestation, about 80%. You know, different calculations talks about, you know, between 3 to 5 gigatons of CO2 that was avoided in terms of emission during this period. Absolutely important. Isabella was in the ministry in this period. Marina, that would be here, was also in the spirit. Many of us were involved on this work and etc. And since then, the deforestation is there going back and forth, but it's going in a trend to go up slowly, but apparently under control. So what actually makes this decline by 80%? There is tons of analysis and studies doing on that, and I would just kind of summarize by head. You know, one of the, you know, the 5 probably key points that were involved in that. First was the creation of protected areas and the recognition and demarcation of indigenous lands. Absolutely important, because deforestation on those areas, it's less than 2% of the deforestation that happens outside of the protected areas. So it's absolutely crucial to have that. The area that was created in put under protection or indigenous lands demarcation during this period is it's close to 50 million hectares. So it's a huge area that has been protected during this period. There is a lot of effort on law enforcement, many actions of that. The monitoring happens to be like, instead of being every year you have information on deforestation, now we get to a point where we have deforestation information every week, if not every day sometimes, right? Promote responsibility on the supply chain. It's this very famous initiative of the soybean moratorium, where the traders voluntarily assume the commitment to not buy any soybean that comes from anything that was clear-cut after 2008. It's working very well. And then, very important, a lot of second thoughts about the infrastructure projects in the Amazon. There is an intrinsic link between infrastructure and deforestation. I don't know if I lived here. I didn't live here. So there is one of the analysis that we did was look at what happens along the roads. So the loss of forests along the federal roads in Brazil is 44%. So if the whole Amazon is like 20%, this was like 44% on the same period along the road. So every time you think about a new road, you have to think that this may be a consequence also. So, okay. So the thing is, now we got this. This is what is happening today in Brazil. So since the beginning of the year, there is a lot of change happening on the policies related to control deforestation and environment in general in Brazil. We're not getting to the discussion about like what exactly, et cetera, but it's important to remember the numbers, because the numbers say something is wrong. So Houston, we have a big problem, right? So what we have here is like, this is the monthly data from INPE, the spatial agency, saying how much deforestations in area they actually identify during each month. This is not like the final data on what will be the deforestation this year, but it's a very, very important indication of what's going on. So it is simply exploded in June, July, August, September, and October continues there, right? So worst. So this is like 93% increase from last year to this year. So the expectation is that instead of having deforestation under control, now we know that we are close to lose the control. This means that the number that we will get in terms of increase will be the largest increase on deforestation since 94. It's like we're going backwards, right? Now, 90% of that is illegal. And how we know that? Because another project that we have on Mapiomas, we actually validate each one of the alerts that is being done, and we have evaluated about 10,000 of them already. And we cross this information of each one of those alerts, image before, after, blah, blah, and then we cross this information with all sorts of authorizations, if they are in protected areas or not, and etc. And we could find out that 90% is actually very conservative, In fact, less than 1% of each one of those alerts have any authorization to happen. And less than 5% in area has been authorized. So 90% is kind of, being conservative. Maybe we just missed something, etc. But it's really critical, right? Almost there. The other question is, do we need to cut the forest down? Because that's like, maybe we need to cut down the forest, right? So what happened with the forest? So after you cut down. So this number, it comes from Terra Class, which is a program also from INPE and Embrapa in Brazil, where they analyze what happened with the land after you clear cut. So this is analysis of what happened until 2014, comparing for all the areas that have been clear cut since '88. And the numbers that we got from Map Biomas is pretty similar to that, is even more radical, because we get smaller areas to see, but I think this one is kind of very clear. It's actually official data, so it's even more is drastic to explain. So it's kind of a, for 63% of the area, it's low productive pasture. What is that? Like 1 animal per hectare or less. Okay, this is what 63% of the land became. 23% was abandoned. It's simply abandoned. Like it's degraded, you just abandon, and it's kind of regrowing somehow. And just about 14% of the area is under cropland, mining, very small, because mining in areas is very small, and urban areas, which is very small also. So in a nutshell, we are basically clear-cut forests. For every 10 hectares that we clear-cut, about 10 of them become something productive, and the rest will be like pasture or abandoned. It's like, why we are doing that? Like, what's the purpose of doing that, right? So, yeah, so that's where we are. So, summarizing the story, this is like the page I found this morning. I find this very curious. That there is a study done by INPE in '88 when they start projects, where they look at the images available from the first mission of Landsat back in '75, and they managed to actually, I think it was the first use of the Landsat imagery for monitoring forests in the world, and they actually found out that at that moment, 0.5% of the Amazon has been impacted or clear-cut. That was 75. Yeah, I was surprised with this because kind of, just 0.5. That's what 75 is yesterday, right? In '88, it was 5%. And now we are on 19%. I mean, is there a point that we should stop? I think that's the question that we have for us. Like, is there a point that we should stop? And I would propose that this is where we should stop. This is like kind of a soccer. Brazilians, we like soccer inside the 4-4-2. Like you can choose like 5-3. I like 4-4-2, right? And what is 4-4-2? 4-4-2 means like, let's stop on the 20% max. And let's use this 20% that we have clear-cut to do something productive, intensive, make the best use possible of those lands that we have open. Either if it's pasture, agriculture, agroforestry, industries, whatever. But let's use intensively and wisely this land. It's an immense piece of land. 20% of the Amazon is like 80 million hectares, even more. This is more than all the area dedicated to agriculture in Brazil. So it's immense area, right? Second, 4 will be like sustainable forest management, to use sustainably the forest, and to apply techniques could be timber, non-timber forest products, services, and etc. And 4% on full protection. So this comes from something that we wrote down how many years ago? Like, I don't know, 10 years ago we were thinking on this or something. But I think it's time to express this now and say like, maybe this is the vision that we could share, etc. So the question I think for this workshop, and that's why we are very keen to have all of you here, is like, okay, if you want to do something like this or whatever is the vision, what is the leapfrog? And a leapfrog in Portuguese, and I have to say because it's like o pulo do sapo don't work, right? It's actually o pulo do gato. Okay, so what is o pulo do gato? What is the leapfrog that we could take to actually get out from this disaster that we have now happening, to jump to something completely new for the next evolution that could have a vision like this or something like that? Thank you.
Let's go. Okay. It's great to have Tasso before, so I'm trying to be very briefly. Thanks a lot. So back to the map. This is a generation problem. As Tasso mentioned, deforestation just happened now in our life generation time. So this is something that we have to solve it, and that's our challenge. That's the 2017 deforestation map. So red is deforestation, yellow are no forest cover, and the green are forest area. So just remind that the green are also some areas that have been degraded. So there is some type of light green and dark green forest. We don't know exactly, but the proportion it might be around 20% as deforestation already, and at least 10 up to 20% more of degradation. What means degradation? It means the area has been already affected by forest fires, illegal logging, or both. And that's really very vulnerable for a large-scale forest fires, catastrophic forest fires. So that's very quickly, we can get to 30% or more than that in a couple of years if you don't really stop it. And Brazil, of course, is not prepared to deal with forest fires, which just happened, huge forest fires. If California is not prepared, imagine Brazil. So what's going on now? We're on the perfect storm. So deforestation, forest degradation is moving very, very rapidly. It's up. The green guys, house emission coming from the Amazonians represent 42%. Today, it used to be even higher. 10 years ago, the emissions come from deforestation was representing almost 60%. Today, it's 42%. For the economy that just generate less than 10% of GDP. Does it really make sense for us? Very low social indicators. So the Amazon becoming a region of poverty, inequality, poverty and violence and criminality associated. So it's a territory of illegality. And the most of land use is very addicted to illegality, informality. I think Tasso explained very well. So that's we are now. This is the map that we produce in Amazon and other folks. This is a social progress index. Red, this is by counting, by municipalities. It's about 772 municipalities. Red and yellow and orange are municipalities with very low social indicators. It's a 43 different indicators that include violence, include housing, include nutrition, include access to education and health, etc. Only the light green and the dark green is a little bit better, but only among the 700 municipalities, only one is above the Brazilian average. So Amazonia today is the most undeveloped with very low social progress compared to the rest of Brazil. If the Brazilian Amazon is becoming, if you look at separated, is going to rank among the position number 100 in the world. It's below countries in Africa. So that's really what's results of this 30 years of boom-bust kind of development. They really take the forest out, and as a result, poverty, inequality, violence, and low level of development. Basis for the leapfrogging, I think we need to avoid the boom-bust. The boom-bust is typically happening with invasion of a public forest, take the timber out, illegal logging, followed by cattle ranching, abandon this area, as Tasso mentioned, go to the next frontier, do again. And as a result, the costs of the government to take in charge of provide health, education, infrastructure is immense. And what we can, as a result, we can actually generate very low revenues and taxes for the country. So does it really make sense for geopolitical reasons, for economics reasons, to keep doing this kind of business that we have in the Amazon? So consolidate the protected areas. As Tasso mentioned, we got already 44% of the Brazilian Amazon is either protected as indigenous reserves or conservation units. So those areas are now under threat. Illegal logging, gold mining, and some aspects of the government at federal level wants to reduce the level of protection of those areas. So this 44% is critical. It's not guaranteed. We need to really consolidate those areas. And we have also about, talking about the size of territories here, an area big as Germany, Portugal, Switzerland, Belgium, and Netherlands combined is still public forest not yet protected. And those areas has been invaded by land grabbers right now. So we needed to designate those areas and to save those areas. Implement the forest code on the private lands, so make sure that the rule of law is really in place, and reduce transaction costs for forest business economy. If you want to invest in the Amazon right now in a good faith, if you want to do, let's say, forest plantation or forest management, or want to do biodiversity, it's really difficult. It's very complicated to do the right thing. If you want to clear cut the forest, it's much easier. So we actually, it's a perverse kind of incentives, and then we need to fix it. This is the unclaimed public forest. It's a map from our friends from IPAN. That's the yellow are the state unclaimed public forests, and the federal are the green ones. So that's really give us a perspective. This territory here have to be protected. More than a quarter, about 30% this year of deforestation happened in this area. Those people, illegal loggers, land grabbers, know this map. They know how to actually operate. They don't want to go there and take the land and using deforestation as a way to claim the land. I'm talking about the leapfrog. This is a map that we just produced, and the map, it's a combination of deforestation. Look at the municipality level. So that's red are municipality that has more than 80% of deforestation already. So for the red municipalities, what means leapfrogging? It means restoration. It means land intensification. It means land tenure. Have to be property right to solve it. It needs intensify the infrastructure. The green ones, the light green ones, are the municipalities that have under pressure right now. It's a lot of forest is still there, but with high rate of deforestation. So the yellow here, it means. So those areas, it's areas that are located in Pará and part of Mato Grosso. So for those areas, we need really strong enforcement. We need to create protected areas, consolidate the protected areas. It's a different kind of solution that we have to put in place. And the dark greens areas are, I would say, more passive protected. It needs attention, but less attention than the yellow ones. So it's a way to look at how we actually, we can prioritize those in terms of space. And we need to think about in terms of time as well, because time is another dimension they want to talk here, the dimension to look at long-term perspective. And I think going for the next final slides, I think on the global, beyond Brazil, I think we need to make sure that the demand for zero deforestation product is becoming to reality. It's becoming a buzzword on the international conference. Everybody comes and say you want to buy products from zero deforestation, but it's not yet translating to reality. And that we need it. And I think we have the tools today to monitor deforestation real time, to know exactly what's going on at property level, at pixel level. And I think we have people here like Toby from the Tracy initiative here that's going to be around. He knows how to trace those products that's coming from illegal source up to the consumer. So we need to make this into reality. Move forward with the payment for environmental service. This forest provides service for the planet. And it needs to go beyond just a talking point. What's really needed to do and need to do soon as possible. Support emerging initiative on the bioeconomy. We're going to discuss this more tomorrow. I think we got a people like Carlos Nobre and companies like Natura and others are pushing forward with this of what mean the potential for doing this. Science technology is absolutely critical. I think that's why I'm here with Tasso, try to bring institutions with prestigious such Princeton to be involved. I think we need more, and we have to do some leapfrog in science technology as well. We don't have time. We need to go very quickly in this. I think there is new methodologies coming that allows us to move faster. Private investment, need for building a forest-based economy. I think we get a lot of people here that we invited, Fernanda from Right Capital, Johannes from the Good Energy Foundations. So those people are really on the frontier to developing new ways of really bring investment, good investment. We need good investment. We need to, there is no way to save the Amazon without undeveloping poverty. We need development. We need people to get on the other side of the transition curve in terms of development. So I have a, because my team is Botafogo in Brazil, so we need to have a little bit. Yeah, it's more like, but I agree with Tasso on the 20%. That's a maximal, okay? It's 50% for forest use, but I'm the bioeconomy here, okay? And 30% of preservation, so that's different. So the leapfrogging concept that's on to make sure that we see this picture again and again from today and tomorrow. So today, that's the situation. So deforestation, social conflict, land grabbing, poverty, and development. And then usually, you know the forest curve. So the forest curve, expect that you on the history that in US and Europe, people destroy the forest, they get developed, and then recover, restore the forest. So for the tropics, doesn't really work this way. If you destroy the tropical forest, that's gone forever. So we have to avoid the typical forest curve. You want to get there when deforestation ends. Social progress is possible. A prosperous economy, biodiversity. So how to get there? What the tools we need, what the kind of institutional arrangement we have to put in place, policy, market solutions. So that's the challenge that we have to address here. It's not a conversation that it ends here, it started here. I think it started already in another place, but we want to, I think the reason to do everything we are doing is also moral. I think we have an obligation to really, in our lifetime, to make sure that the next generation has this luxury, unique forests that have been around for 2 million, and the indigenous population has been present in this territory for 15,000 years. And up to 1975, only 0.5% was destroyed. So that's our challenge, and let's do it, solve it.
Hello, hello. Well, after you two, it's hard to be here. Okay, well, thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here with you all. I mean, we have big challenges, but also we have a lot of people here that wants to face these challenges, and let's try to solve it. I know Beto since 2004, and since then I keep going to Amazon region annually. And since 2014, we developed a TV series for TV Global. And since then, I started shooting a film that will be released on 27th of this month on São Paulo Film Festival. And it's a portrait of the last 5 years and also of what is happening right now on inside the forest. So I have a trailer, a 2-minute trailer that I will present you, if you can turn off the lights. And then I will show you a video done specifically for this time.
Fala, gente boa. Alô? Qual que é o tamanho daquela fazenda ali de céu azul? 760 aqui. Qual que é o valor dela? 20 milhões. Tá joia. Eu tô mexendo no negócio aqui.
Nós temos uma área mais ou menos equivalente a 2 vezes o estado de Minas Gerais, na Amazônia, disponíveis para grilagem, que era a apropriação de grandes extensões de floresta para revender essas áreas no futuro. É uma forma de crime, de fato, organizado.
Quem é o maior vendedor de fazenda hoje do Parazão? É o C, cara. O cara tem que bajular o C.
Então, a especulação fundiária é o primeiro motivo que move essa questão do desmatamento aqui.
Pagava quanto aqui?
Pagava 3 mil pra mim que corto e quanto você?
Só tem essa ilha aqui, já de floresta. Por trás, os madeireiros já vêm fazendo essa destruição.
Difícil combater num ambiente que você não tem um lado legal para você apoiar.
De fato, a sociedade vive do crime ambiental.
Isso aqui tudo é cambaral. Essa aqui é a maçaranduba. E essa aqui ó, é o IP.
Não há muita alternativa para que esse povo viva aqui.
O helicóptero passou aqui e viu a atividade aqui.
Negativo, a minha história tá ali tem mais de 2 anos. Puxa no satélite, vê se tem um pau aqui, veio de 2 anos pra cá, rapaz. É a nossa floresta que nós estamos cuidando. A gente vai cuidar da floresta.
Lá é a última fronteira agrícola do Brasil. Então, vai de lá hoje, nem pra você pegar um mato, um pedaço de terra, você fica rico de novo.
So we are burning our biodiversity. We are talking about our Alexandria library that we still don't know, and or our Silicon Valley. People are saying that Amazon is our Silicon Valley, or possibility of our future. And I think that we should face the forest as a new way of being in the world also. I believe that. And I want to mention a story that when I was shooting this film, I was with the cacique Juarez, is the Munduruku leader, and I wrote on the screenplay that I want to know how to say tree in Munduruku. And I asked him, and he said, look, we don't have a word for tree in Munduruku. I say, oh, in this forest, how you don't have a word for tree? It's impossible. And he said, no, we have a word for each tree. Each tree has its own name. We don't have a generic name for tree. So this reveals their knowledge and how we depend on their vision to the future. So now I will present you the video, and then we can discuss a little bit more. Okay.
A floresta amazônica existe há milhões de anos. E durante todo esse tempo ocorreram inúmeros cataclismos, como aquecimentos e esfriamentos, o que é natural do metabolismo da Terra. Mas como explicar que a floresta amazônica saiu ilesa dessas mudanças climáticas?
Ela deve ter alguma capacidade inata, porque se não fosse isso, nós não teríamos hoje a biodiversidade que tem na Amazônia. E aí a explicação era que ela tem alguma capacidade de puxar o ar úmido do oceano para dentro do continente. Essa teoria foi chamada de teoria da bomba biótica de umidade, que é uma bomba d'água que está puxando os ventos para dentro e trazer consigo umidade. Então, onde tem floresta, chove, não é onde chove tem floresta. Muitos povos nativos, ou seja, de culturas tribais, já têm esse conhecimento. Onde tem floresta, tem chuva.
A floresta tem mais olhos do que folhas, dizem os índios. Cada copa de árvore chega a ter 10.000 espécies de insetos dentro dela, sem falar nos milhões de espécies de fungos e bactérias.
A tecnologia, a nanotecnologia que opera nos processos da vida é algo quase incompreensível, de tão evoluído, de tão sofisticado, tão eficiente que nós não temos consciência deles.
Se a Amazônia quiser entrar no século XXI, a gente deve ter aí um cuidado para, de fato, garantir essa conservação da biodiversidade da Amazônia. De fato, são três coisas que estão associadas: a biodiversidade, o carbono, porque está na forma da biomassa das árvores, e os serviços ecossistêmicos, que o principal dele é a água. A Amazônia é um grande produtor de água. O PIB do Brasil, o agronegócio que está no centro-sul, as hidrelétricas, o abastecimento de água de grande parte da população brasileira depende de uma estabilidade no regime de chuva. E a Amazônia provém, é um provedor dessas chuvas, parte dessas chuvas vem da Amazônia. Isso mostra claramente o papel que a Amazônia tem em serviços ambientais. O que a Amazônia precisa ter é remunerado por esse serviço. Precisa ser remunerado. Os lugares onde tem floresta, para manter floresta em pé, não será mantido floresta em pé com miséria e subdesenvolvimento. A floresta será mantida em pé se tiver progresso social e desenvolvimento na Amazônia. Um tipo de desenvolvimento diferente do resto do Brasil, porque a Amazônia requer um olhar diferente.
Hoje, nossa grande esperança de salvar a imensa floresta está na capacidade das populações tradicionais de entender e defender nosso maior patrimônio.
Esse rio aqui se torna meu corpo. Por que eu quero dizer que o rio é meu corpo? É o corpo de todo mundo, né? Por exemplo, esses igarapé é a nossa veia. Os madeireiros estão destruindo a cabeceira de igarapé. Então o que está acontecendo? O rio está morrendo aos poucos também. Os igarapé é o primeiro que seca, que fortalece o Tapajós. Daqui uns tempos, daqui a 100 anos, nós vamos brigar pela água.
É possível que sejam essas pessoas, esses povos, essas culturas que sejam, na verdade, o nosso futuro e não o nosso passado. Que sejam eles que tenham algo a nos ensinar e não nós algo a ensinar a eles, como nós nos vangloriamos tão frequentemente.
Para manter a floresta em pé, é preciso desenvolver uma economia de base florestal. Por outro lado, temos que saber usar as terras já desmatadas.
Em grandes números, a Amazônia tem 3 Amazônias, pelo menos. Tem a Amazônia desmatada, que é 19%, provavelmente vai se estabilizar em torno de uns 20%. E aí essa Amazônia, que é enorme, dá 3 vezes o tamanho do estado de São Paulo e ainda mais o estado do Rio de Janeiro juntos, já desmatada, é suficiente para a gente abrigar todas as atividades econômicas da agropecuária. Soja, dendê, produção de carne, milho, quer dizer, toda a nossa agricultura cabe nisso e sobra a área. Então não precisamos, de fato, para a produção em geral, desmatar mais nada. E aí você tem 80% que sobra de floresta, mas nem tudo que é floresta vai ter atividade econômica. Vai ter uma parte disso, a gente acha que uns 40%, vai ter possibilidade de fazer manejo, extrair madeira, tirar copaíba, fazer atividades econômicas e gerar emprego e renda para as pessoas. Porque se a floresta tiver valor, ela vai ser conservada. Se as pessoas sentirem que a floresta tem um valor nas suas vidas, na sua vida social, na sua vida cultural e na sua vida econômica, elas serão os primeiros defensores dessa floresta.
Se uma espécie da flora amazônica, a seringueira, movimentou a economia brasileira por mais de meio século, o que podemos esperar dessa floresta tão pouco conhecida?
Se na floresta tem 6.500 espécies de árvore, milhões de espécies de inseto, vai saber quanto de micróbio? A gente não tem nem noção. É um cosmos de complexidade. A gente sabe muito pouco ainda. Apesar de ter já esse conhecimento, é nada, é a pontinha do iceberg em relação do que tudo que a gente ainda precisa descobrir de como funciona a floresta.
A região norte inteira, ela possui quase 5.000 doutores. A USP tem quase 8.000 doutores. Uma única instituição do país tem mais doutores de uma região única no planeta. Então a gente precisa melhorar isso. Avançar a ciência aqui na Amazônia e fixar a ciência aqui. E a gente precisa lutar para formar novos mestres, novos doutores, comprometidos com a região.
Esse processo não será barato e não será rápido. A gente não tem experiência no Brasil e no resto do mundo de como fazer uma civilização em trópicos úmidos. Gerar conhecimento e tecnologia em floresta tropical é um desafio para a ciência e para a tecnologia.
Não será mantido floresta em pé com miséria e subdesenvolvimento. A floresta será mantida em pé se tiver progresso social para, de fato, garantir essa conservação da biodiversidade da Amazônia.
Bom, o que eu estou propondo é esforço de guerra. É desmatamento zero para anteontem e imediatamente começar a plantar não milhões, bilhões de árvores. Então, eu estou propondo um esforço de guerra, não é guerra contra pessoas, é guerra contra a ignorância.
A Amazônia, maior concentração de biodiversidade do planeta, abriga também uma grande diversidade de etnias e culturas. Povos indígenas, caboclos, seringueiros, ribeirinhos, quilombolas, além de brasileiros gaúchos, capixabas, mineiros e nordestinos que migraram para a região nos últimos 40 anos. E só há uma maneira de garantir um futuro sustentável e próspero para a Amazônia: reconhecer que há muitas Amazônias, muitos interesses legítimos, e que não haverá futuro para ninguém se a floresta for destruída.
A gente não tinha visto.
So we have, where's Andre in the microphone? Yeah. Okay, so we have a microphone to pass around. But first of all, thank you so much for your works, for what you do, right? And for this incredibly powerful presentations that really got to the core of the issues in such poignant images and powerful numbers, right? That you've already webbing into storytelling as well. So what we want to do now, we have about half an hour, and we would like to hear as many as we can for this round. So why don't we just, get bundles of questions? In Portuguese, buquês de perguntas. Let's get bundles of questions. Let's try to be as condensed as we can so we can have more voices emerging, right? So the idea would be to collect about 3, 4, 5 first set of brief comments, questions, and then we will have our wonderful set of panelists responding, and then we get another round. And then in about half an hour, we will pause for a coffee break, and we'll resume the session then on a world without the Amazon, where Elena Shevlekova and Stephen Pekala will present the climate modeling exercise they did, preceded by a wonderful presentation by Brazilian climate scientist Paulo Artacho. And then we'll hear comments from Michael Oppenheimer and former Minister of the Brazilian Environment, Isabella Teixeira. So that's the program for the afternoon. So who wants to kick off first set of brief comment or question for our panelists. Yes. Okay. So Maite, Andre? Yeah? Okay. Okay. So Maite and then Neidinha.
Hi, I'm Maite. I work for Connexus. I know you guys. Congratulations for the movie. I have seen parts of that when it was on TV. I think we have a much worse war than a war in ignorance. I think we have a war against organized crime that is far from being ignorant. So I would like for you to comment a little bit, for the panel to comment, because I think that is the hardest war that we have to fight. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, here. Yes, here, Neidinha. Yeah. Okay, microphone.
Então, parabéns aos três. E a minha pergunta vai para o Beto, mas também, Tasso, não é falta de informação no Brasil, né? Nós temos bastante informação sobre a situação toda da Amazônia, principalmente das pressões. E quando o Beto traz essa questão do fundo do poço, né, como é que a gente sai dele, né, que hoje eu acho que é o que pega muito, por exemplo, quando vocês jogam os mapas, e aí você tem Rondônia, Mato Grosso e Pará no foco de todas as queimadas que explodiram de julho a setembro, né? Só que tu tem isso ocorrendo, um aumento disso a partir de um discurso que vem de um governo que diz que não há queimada na Amazônia, de um governo que diz que não irá mais demarcar terras indígenas, de um governo que, quando o invasor queima o carro do IBAMA, o ministro do Meio Ambiente vai lá defender o cara que queimou o carro do IBAMA e não defender, sabe, a população que está ameaçada. Aí a minha pergunta para os dois, porque não tem falta de informação, né, é como resolver a questão a partir dessas informações que já se tem, certo? Mas a partir de um novo patamar totalmente adverso, né, totalmente adverso à questão da conservação das áreas protegidas a partir de uma nova economia para a nossa região, para nós que somos da Amazônia. E, Estevão, parabéns, ó, lindo.
I will briefly translate. Okay, vou traduzir rapidinho. She asked, she was asking more like given the current political climate, maybe it's not lack of information, maybe there is information, but what's happening, especially regarding information that what happened, the fires, the conservation areas threatened, right? So if I understood correctly, it was the question how to read, the current political moment and what could be done politically in terms of public policy to address these issues. And then we have one more, Paulo.
Hi. I think it's more of a comment that is related to Neidinha's point. I think we have information, and we have even more information that was presented. And the big question, who is driving that deforestation? You showed some of the players. But behind of that, you have the market, either the people that are buying the products or are funding the companies that are doing this. And within the situation that we have right now, the government views on what to do with the Amazon, then we have to look more at what's happening with the market. Who are the buyers and who is funding? And there is much more information now about who are the companies, the banks, the pension funds, all of that, who are funding what's happening there. We know that 10 companies, they are the most responsible for most of the deforestation that is there, because most of the deforestation is associated with cattle ranching, just for beef production. And we know, so we have 100 companies operating that. We have 400,000 ranchers, so it's hard to go after all of them, but we have 10 companies that are really the ones that could make a difference. So who are the funders of those companies? Okay. So that's one key point.
Great. So I think in a nutshell, some of the first set of three questions, right? So the organized crime, public policy, the political moment, and then the question of corporations that are fueling what's going on. Yeah.
I think the question of organized crime is going to come again tomorrow. I think in the presentation for Daniel Azeredo from the public attorney, public prosecutor, I think they are really doing a great job on trying to address those problem. I think this illegality, as we describe in terms of land grabbing, has been increased and it need to be stopped, of course. And I think the information that we have to combine with another type of information that dealing with more investigation of organized crime. I think the film of Estevão had shown a little bit of was recording how those operations actually going on. The question of drugs, because the Amazonia has been now a place that the drugs from Colombia to access to Europe has go through the main rivers, and then they create a lot of violence and insecurity. So I think the other peoples, like even Ilona and the Igarapé people that here might be jumping and have more actually knowledge about that. The questions of the information to feed public policy and make the government to act in a way that we expected. I think Nidinha is absolutely right in terms of we have a lot of information. I think the information get more specifically, and I think the information is not going only to the government, but also go to the markets. And I think we need, that Paulo Barreto mentioned, make sure that that we address who is actually financing the destruction, because to destroy 1 hectare of forest, it's about $1,000. So if you destroy, as with this year, 1 million hectares of forest, and it's a lot of money. And there are people are doing this. So we need to, of course, to track this. And I think maybe tomorrow we're going to come back to this point.
Yeah, so, maybe some comments on this. I think that the situation we have now is that we have maybe probably for the first time since, at least since the current democracy regime, like probably since the constitution at age, is the first time that we have a circumstance where the government, the current administration have a don't have a proactive, to be very light, proactive action in relation to issues related to sustainability and environment, and in many cases have an attitude that is kind of counter the developments that we have before. Again, being lighting. So what this highlights is the importance of other actors. Because this whole thing about deforestation and sustainability is all about, the work of all the stakeholders. And there are times in which part of the stakeholders will not be willing to cooperate, and other times that will be the other ones. And so we are in a time where maybe we can't count on the federal government too much, but we need to count on the governors, state governments. Like we have one governor of a state here, kind of coming and to see and kind of paying attention what's him here to get part of the discussion and so on. So we have to rely on the business sector. We have to have its importance of the civil society is even stronger. So I think there is several initiatives happening in the society now. That I think it's the good side of this situation we are living now, is that the society and the other actors are coming together much more closer. One good example is this movement that we have called the Coalition Forest, Agriculture, and Climate, which brings together business people, NGOs, the academy, to think about what is the future that we could have in the different areas, like for the whole Brazil. And several of us are here. Luis Cornacchioni and André, for example, are coordinating facilitators of the process. So I think this is one side. The other thing is, I think at this moment, the importance of the decisions taken by the business community are absolutely crucial. Because as Paulo said, this is what moves, what moves the moment in Brazil is recovery of the economy. And so everything is an excuse linked to the economy, right? It's an excuse to save or to do something related to the economy. So that's the business people that will answer for that. So I'm just giving one simple example. I mean, the government is calling for mining on indigenous reserves. I never heard, honestly, I never heard any serious mining company pledging for that. asking for that, demanding for that. But it has to be spoken, has to be said very clearly. That's not with us. It's not our demand. If you're proposing that, it's demanding for somebody else. It's not for us. Maybe it's from the people doing illegal mining on the indigenous reserve, which has nothing to do with research. So it's very crucial that we have the involvement of the business side, remembering that just one number that pops up in my head now. When we look at all the deforestation that happened in 2008 in Brazil, it involves less than 0.5% of the properties. It means that 99.5% of the properties in Brazil were not involved on deforestation last year. So all these people will be impacted by what happened on this 0.5. So that's the sort of involvement that we need. We need the big involvement of the the business community on this debate and the solutions that we want to have.
Maybe something important to say is that Amazon and Pindorama, when we started thinking the film, me and Beto, then Paulo also, we started thinking about how to defend or to designate these areas that are unprotected, huge areas, and how to combat land grabbing and illegal logging. And this became a campaign that we launched like a month ago. And the agribusiness sector got into the campaign. Luis Cornacchione is here, and Andrea from IPAM. So it's a movement to separate the illegality from what is illegal and what can be talk and dialogue. That is so much important now in Brazil. And about the war against ignorance, I think it's because we are all ignorant of what is the forest, what happens inside the forest, not only in the biotechnology, but also spiritually and also all these other. So we have to knowledge about this.
So let's open the next round of questions. Yeah, so can someone bring the mic for Professor Carlos Nobre? Yeah. And then, yes, João.
Let me raise an issue that I did not see in your talks and I did not see in your movie. In the last 30 years, all opinion polls show that over 90% of Brazilians are always against Amazon deforestation. So, of course, we are living in a very imperfect democracy, representative democracy. So, I would like some comments. Why the political world in Brazil does not listen to the voice of the people? It's really very imperfect democracy when you have over 90% of the people over 30 years against Amazon deforestation, and the policymakers are actually behind the drivers of deforestation. Not all policymakers, but a large majority all over Brazil, in the Amazon as well. So I would like some comments about why the representatives of democracy in Brazil and in the Amazon in particular really do not abide by what the people want.
Okay, so João Meirelles. Yeah.
I'm João Meirelles from Peabiru Institute from Belém, Pará. I'd like also that you would comment on issue that was not stated. Basically, we have less than 35 NGOs working in the Amazon, although the general say there are 10,000. I don't know. I know them all, these 35. And also, we have more than 1 million families of native people, or traditional people, as we say, not besides the Indians. And they have a very small place in the political area. And especially, we have a social tissue that is very weak. We don't have enough local association, grassroots organizations. And I think that's the most important thing. I have been working for 35 years on the third sector, And that's the key issue. I don't see it touched here. So without a real strong social movement, but not a movement political, but a movement that is associations that work, but local foundations, local, it wouldn't work. NGOs wouldn't make that role.
Great, great. Yes, Professor Stanley Stein? Yeah, just, they will bring the microphone to you. Andre, is here?
I have a very simple question.
Yeah, but we want to hear
It's
you so we
only
can
to elaborate on something that was presented by two people before me, and that is, what precisely seems to be driving the deforestation of the Amazon? For example, I have the feeling that cattle raising, right, and what happens to the meat that comes out of the slaughterhouses is all important. And how do you explain this?
Okay, so the basic driver, yes. One more question? Johannes? Yeah, okay, Johannes?
Hi, I'm Johannes from Good Energies. I think Mabiomas is really contributing to advancing the transparency, the information, to really to tell all of us what's happening on the ground. But how do you see the role of Silicon Valley, of blockchain technologies, of Earth genome mapping in contributing to the solution in the Amazon? I mean, it can never be a silver bullet, but do you really think they can really advance the agenda to valuing it more?
So we got complex range of questions, you know, from public perception, policy based on democratic will of the people for the Amazon, social mobilization, latest technology, to the question about which kind of industry is actually driving the deforestation.
I'll take the drivers first, and then we can go to the others. Yeah, for the drivers, let's say the direct one that suggests the maps and the information we got is that this is cattle, basically. For the area that is being used, from the areas that have been clear cut and is being used now, about 90% is used as cattle production, and 10% for agriculture and other use. So, and agriculture only come years after you have cattle, because when you open the forest, that's not much you can do, because it's really dirty, the environment. So basically, you just like put some seeds there, and see the forest, the pasture come on, and then after some years of fire, you know, and et cetera, then you have the debris and the rest of the forest is there. The remaining is very small, and then you can prepare the soil. Then you can use for more intensive use. So there's not, in the Amazon, it's very difficult to find such a thing like I clear cut the forest and then I have agriculture. It simply, physically, it's not like possible. The same way as it doesn't exist in the Amazon, like clear cut the forest and then take the timber out. After you, I mean, when you cut down the forest, there's no way you can take out the timber, because it's totally mass. Like there's no way you take the log. So you take the logs first, and then you have the deforestation, and then you have the fire, and then you have the pasture, and then eventually you have some, if it's a land that's proper for that, eventually you have this as agriculture. So I would say that, so it's, if you say a direct driver, you would say that, because that's what you see when in the maps. After deforestation, you will see pasture there, right? But probably if you go deeper, then you'll find out the most important driver today, it's occupied territory, is the land grabbing strategy. Because you have all this public land there. You just go there, grab a piece of land. I think the film of Steven is all about that. It actually explains how this whole mechanism works. Explained by the real people, because they collect the phone calls of them. They just simply explain the whole thing. I mean, how you invade the land, etc. So once you get the piece of land, to give value to this piece of land, you have to invest. And the investment is to clear cut forest. It is not cheap. It's about $200 to $400 per hectare to clean up, to make the deforestation. So it's like it's an investment. Who is doing that? It's like some peasant people in the Amazon. Yeah, maybe they do this for 1, 2, 3 hectares. When you see a deforestation of 100 hectares in 1 year, or 50 hectares or something, that's somebody else that is paying for that. And we are finding out that these people are in São Paulo, in Paraná, in Minas Gerais, etc., funding that. It's like it's a business. You fund the people to go there, do the dirty job of opening the area, and then you start a long process of trying to get the rights over this land. This has all sorts of violence and etc. linked to that. So I would say, if you ask me today, what is the underlying driver? It's probably the most important one will be land grabbing. And then on a much lower level, like in terms of area that will be very small, then will be like conversion of areas that are, defined as, have like a clear definition of private land, and you have your opening. But that will be like the underlining main cause. Now, saying that, because this is a totally illegal activity, it's very difficult to actually cut the lines through the land grabbing system, right? So what's the most efficient that we are finding out is actually to talk with the guys that will benefit from the land grabbing process afterwards, which are the farmers. And this will be the farmers that are working with cattle, or if are working with soybean and other things. And so I think for soybean, we had this very interesting agreement in 2008 that actually dropped down the deforestation related to soybean to almost zero. So it's kind of more or less under control for the Amazon. Still a big issue for the Cerrados. But when you look to cattle, although there is this huge effort, and we will hear this tomorrow from Danielle, the strategy that's been talking about that, like to kind of bring the same thing for the cattle business, we are still far away from getting the same kind of arrangement for the cattle. And it's essentially because the cattle business is very different from soybean. Just to start, these damn animals move, right? So they move, like they grow, they born in one farm, they can go to another farm, and then they end up their life in another farm. So it's kind of weird, it's more easier, like with soybean, you know that where they are. Yeah. So that's one thing. The second thing is, it's the organization of the chain of custody is much more complex. Like with very small, you can have small producers, people doing different parts, etc. So I think the strategy that, and Paulo Barreto could talk more about that, because there is this whole strategy that's being developed and implemented now to really tackle the business of beef on a way that we bring traceability from the farm to whatever is the end consumer of this beef, in a way that we can actually separate clearly what is coming from the deforestation. And I think this is like a big challenge.
I think on the, let's say, the entrepreneurship, I think that the whole aspect of the 4th industrial revolution, as Carlos Nobre is going to talk more tomorrow, open a great opportunity for the Brazilian Amazon to jump it, to do a leapfrog in a way that we can actually developing a new economy based on biodiversity and biotech, or a new products from the forest, even fruits or new kind of foods, oils, nuts, fibers, all that stuff. So it needs, of course, a huge investment in science technology right now. The good news is that we can jump it. And I think there was a great opportunity for doing this. We need another type of investment structure. I think you're going to jump it tomorrow to see what the funding mechanisms are available to do the first investments in this territory. Because it's a new territory with a lot of risk. And typically, the business as usual doesn't really invest in the early stage. We need that at state level, public policy that really, like the case of Pará, for example, really help to establish the mechanism, the legal framework that allows for the biodiverse economy to drive. For example, make sure that we are not, I have no problem with property rights of knowledge. Who has the knowledge of this information? With indigenous knowledge is going to be how to deal with this in terms of contract. Otherwise, you create like a mess in terms of legal framework. So there's a lot of challenge, but there's a lot of opportunity. And I think for the first time, biodiversity can come something that usually to be more esoterical. So the biodiversity is there, it has a tremendous value, but it's never translated. But now we can translate it. And more than translating to business, we can read for the first time. So using expression that Estevão mentioned, the Alexandria library is there. We never be able to read because we don't have the tools to read. And now we have the knowledge. We get literacy by biomolecular and a new engineer's way, new technology to do this. And I think that's the kind of thinking we need to do. I think the Amazon deserves the best in terms of really technology. And I think I'm anticipate something that Carlos is going to do, talk more deeply. I'm absolutely engaged, and part of my time is allocated now to make this happen. And I think that's part of the part of the solution that we want to talk here.
Well, about what Carlos mentioned, I think that when we started doing this job, we had a research on preservation and how the Brazilian population supports the preservation, and in big numbers was something like 90% around goes for preservation of the Amazon, but barely 10% feels responsible for that. So we have a huge gap of communication, and I think it's also a great opportunity to make it happen, to connect this will with the possibility of preserving the Amazon. And I think that for communication, and there's something about communication for sure, democracy, but also communication. And I think that if we want to stop, or not stop, but diminish the deforestation, as Tasso said, we have the land grabbers and illegal logging. And now, maybe for the first time, we have an enemy. And this is crucial for a communication campaign. So we have to elect these people as enemies. And they are enemy not only of Brazil, but of the world. So we have a huge opportunity of communication on that. And that's why we have such an important issue to do to diminish deforestation. And for the future, I think you've already said.
So let's collect a last round of comments. So just very briefly, let's try to be very condensed, and then we'll go for we will have a second session, and please stay tuned, because that's and then we'll have a coffee, and then we'll have the second part of the conversation. But we want to collect a few questions, okay? So we just collect them, even if you cannot respond, okay? So we had you here, Juliana, and then Chief Almir, right? And then Stephen. Yes, great. You can have yes.
Hi, I'm Juliana Santiago. I'm a graduate student at the University of Florida, licensed from BNDES. So my question is how we can bring money to finance this leapfrog, Amazonian leapfrog, including considering that the federal money it's not really available at this time. So how we can mobilize other funds, and what could be the ideal governance in this moment to have the money flow coming to finance the Amazonian leapfrog. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Chief Almir Surui, we are so honored to have you here. Thank you. And I will serve as your translator. Eu vou ser o seu tradutor.
Tá bom, obrigado. Então, boa tarde, pessoal. Eu sou Almir Surui. Mas não é uma pergunta, mas eu quero fazer comentários sobre esse debate que está vendo aqui, né? Que é talvez muito importante para todo mundo, como eu vejo, todo mundo está sempre atento, né, aos problemas do mundo. Mas aqui eu vi perguntar assim, será que esses mapas podem resolver parar o desmatamento e como é que pode ajudar, né? Mas assim,
So
É,
please, Shamir, I just want to make some
tá.
comments, and I'm very intrigued. You see these maps, these images, how can they help us? How can this map, how can this visualization help us?
E como que a gente pode resolver o problema da Amazônia, né? Então, primeiro eu quero comentar sobre terras públicas na Amazônia, né? Então, para ter gestão do terras públicas na Amazônia, a gente precisa trabalhar com sistema de governança em cada estado.
Yeah. So the first thing is because public land, and for that you need really is a question of governance, and you really need to work with local governments, the governments of each territory.
E criar plano de ação como é que da importância daquele áreas públicas para aquele estado, para o Brasil e para o mundo.
So you need to create strategize in terms of making clear the public value of that territory for the locality, for the state, for Brazil, and for the planet. Right?
Depois quero comentar sobre terras indígenas na Amazônia.
I want to comment about indigenous land, indigenous territories in the Amazon.
Eu não tenho dúvida, com dinheiro ou sem dinheiro, a gente defende terra indígena, floresta, porque também floresta faz parte da nossa vida.
So we defend, forests because forests is part of our lives. Independent if there's money or no money available, we defend it because it's our life.
E sempre, muitas vezes, eu já participei de um debate igual essa, ou melhor que essa, ou pior que essa. Então, porque a gente fala sempre a mesma coisa. Está acontecendo desmatamento na Amazônia, o direito dos povos indígenas, a gente precisa criar uma política sustentável. E aí? A gente vai continuar fazendo isso?
Okay. So I have participated in many conversations, and it's important, of course, in many variations of conversations, quality, etc. But then the question is, so we want sustainability, we want investments, but what's next? Basically, what's the next step? What does that lead to? In other words, calling for a rhetoric of the concrete, of an intervention.
Hoje, terra indígena, direito dos povos indígenas do Brasil está sendo atacado pelo governo usando o discurso de que terra indígenas são improdutivas.
Today, our rights are being challenged and threatened with a governmental political discourse that our territories are unproductive.
Mas isso não é verdade.
But that's not true.
Tem muitas terras indígenas que são produtivas, seja na agricultura, seja no meio ambiente, seja na cultura, seja o que for, a terra indígena tem contribuído ao bem comum, primeiramente no Brasil e depois ao mundo.
It is productive, it's of course culturally, it's economically in its own ways, it's socially, but it's also environmentally production in terms of the services it provides, and for local people, but of course now, as we know, for the planet.
Agora, o que falta para realmente dar o ponto nisso, as pessoas terem coragem de investir o projeto sustentável dentro das terras indígenas.
So the challenge is how do you think of sustainable development within the indigenous territories, right? He's pushing for development within the indigenous territories, not to assume that they are given.
Investir conhecimentos, não só financeiramente, investir tecnologias, ferramentas que podem facilitar e realmente criar modelos de desenvolvimento sustentável na Amazônia.
Yeah. So it's really just invest knowledge production, etc., technology, but something that really can become pilots of what a sustainable development of the Amazonia would look like or would be.
Se a gente não fazer isso, a gente vai sempre continuar debatendo o que nós fazemos na Amazônia. Coitadinhos os povos indígenas da Amazônia, né? Por quê? A gente não conseguiu ainda que a gente criar modelo de uma gestão de uma terra indígena, né? E existe vários planos lá que pode ser apoiado, pode ser criado modelo para que servir que é possível você desenvolver a Amazônia sustentavelmente.
He's saying what's needed really like pilots or projects or plans in terms of really developing, sustainably development the indigenous territories, right? So that can become a model for a larger project of sustainability.
Com responsabilidade social, econômico, ambiental e cultural.
So with social, cultural, environmental responsibility.
Então, esse comentário eu queria deixar aqui para vocês.
I want to
Muito
leave this
obrigado pela
commentary
atenção.
for you. Thank you. Obrigado, chefe Elmir. Muito obrigado. So we have a quick remark from Steven Schwartzman. Yes, Andre? Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you all for terrific presentations and a great movie. Various people here have noted, and various agribusiness leaders in Brazil have emphasized that modern agribusiness is not doing deforestation now. That's absolutely true. And then, in fact, the real deforestation is being driven by basically criminal activities into criminal organizations, land grabbing, and so on. Also true. And those two things are completely separate if we look at them in a photograph at this instant. Historically, not so separate. And in the future, unless there's real definitive action to allocate that 80 million hectares that's unallocated of land in the Amazon and to repress the criminal activity, it won't continue to be true. I mean, no one would be illegally occupying public land and expending resources if they didn't have the expectation that it was going to get incorporated into value chains later. So my question is, don't you think that this should be part of the agenda of the companies, the agribusiness companies that are really concerned about having sustainable operations, as well as the international consumer goods companies who have zero deforestation supply chains commitments, who maybe aren't thinking about it in those terms, but whose influence could be important to help break that link?
Okay, good. I will not say that you have to fully answer, but we would like to hear 30 seconds, each one of you, some final remarks to be continued later. We want to hear from you.
Steve, that's a great idea. And I think in some way you have to define the boundary and say for now and beyond, not a single new piece of deforestation land is going to be part of included in the market. And we have to maybe kind of use in 2008 or something like that. And then that their responsibility for them to find a way, another. So it means a single polygon, recent deforestation, is never can be put into the market. And I think the MAP biomas is a fantastic tool for us to look at this and try to come up with something that more strategic. And I think Danielle is going to talk tomorrow because the public attorney is doing just that in terms of each illegal deforestation polygon now has been detected, has been open as civil public action against those. So how to translate this in terms of make sure that these polygons of deforestation is out of the market now in the future. It's not going to be legalized anytime. If you make sure that, so we reduce the incentives for the land grabbers operation right now.
Yeah, I just put on my list for tomorrow because we have to have a list of do's. So for the leapfrogging stuff, there will be something on traceability and commitment. So commitment, traceability, and stuff like that, or we have to figure out what is exactly that. And I think the other one is to mix a little bit this, mix or put it together, this idea of development in sustainable development in the protected areas, whether it's indigenous lands or the forest that is protected, and this notion of the best knowledge, tech, innovation that we could find in relation to forests, and kind of put together those two things. So I think there's another thing that will be in my list here for thinking on the end of the day tomorrow.
No, just say thank you. And Almir, thank you for your talk. Obrigado pela sua palavra. And I think maybe this is the great challenge for us, is to combine this vision of market with a vision of the world that's not only about money. Okay.
Thank you, Beto. Thank you, Tasso, Beto.